So, what do you think? Do citizens have a right to privacy? And before you answer that, let's lay up let me give you a hypothetical. In this hypothetical, we're not going to be talking about the First Amendment. We're going to be assuming that um, a state government passed a law, and a person broke that law and was arrested. And when that person was arrested, they claimed that the law violated their constitutional right to privacy. And so they sued. And they sued the government, and they went to court and they said, hey, I should not have been arrested. And so that's our argument, that this law that you passed, whatever it does, doesn't matter. It violated my right to privacy. Well, do citizens have a right to privacy? Here's how the strict constructionists would approach that question. First thing they would do is they would note that while the Constitution includes some provisions that have to do with privacy, right, there is no general right to privacy listed in the Constitution. There are certain laws. The police can't just enter your home and search through your house without a warrant, right? The Constitution prohibits the government from forcing you to have soldiers stay at your house. Even in times of war, they can't knock on your door and say, hey, soldiers are going to be staying in your house for the duration of the war or for a little while we're in this area. That's what the British did during the Revolutionary War. And so they said, we're putting that in our Constitution, can't do that. They would acknowledge that those things exist. But what they would point out is that, but there is no right to privacy mentioned explicitly in the Constitution. There's freedom of religion, right? There's freedom of speech, but there's no right to privacy. And so what a strict constructionist would say is, even if that law, you think that law is terrible, even if the people of the state thinks that law is terrible, you can try and get your state legislature to change the law, but the court itself can't do anything, because all the court can do is look at what the framers intended, look at what was said at the Constitutional Convention, the debates that were had, and then do a literal reading of the Constitution and make their decision based on that. Now they would say, now there is another remedy. If people think that there should be an explicit right to privacy, then perhaps, people should try and get a constitutional amendment passed saying people have a right to privacy. Right? That won't help you in your current court case, but if people believe that if the Constitution does provide a remedy, if people believe that there should be a right to privacy, amend the Constitution to the United States. But it's not up to the court to read into the Constitution a right to privacy if it's not there. That's how a strict constructionist would approach it. Now, loose constructionists would be working with all the same facts, but they might approach it differently. Not even they might, they would approach it differently. They would look at the Constitution and they would point out, yeah, there are those rights. You do need a warrant to go into somebody's house, right? You can't force people to quarter soldiers in their homes. They would say that a right to privacy is actually implied by those other specific rights. And so they would say, a loose constructionist would say, we can go ahead and declare that law unconstitutional. The one the guy said violated his right to privacy, right? The court can say, what we're saying is that based on the rights that are listed, we think there's an implied right to privacy. And so in this court case, we're going to declare that law unconstitutional. And from that point forward, other courts will know there is a right to privacy. And that law, going back to our previous discussions, would become the precedent. Oh, remember in that court case, the court said there is a right to privacy. Then the next time a judge is faced with a case having to do with the right to privacy, they would go back to that court case. So that's the difference. The strict constructionist is going to be sort of more limited in the way, and I don't mean that in a bad way, more limited in the way that they're going to approach it, and think that the powers of the courts are more limited. They do think that if people believe that there's a right to privacy, there's a remedy built into the Constitution, amend the Constitution. A loose constructionist would say, you know, the courts can actually clarify that for further courts by simply declaring that there's a right to privacy. Now, which approach you think is right is you've got to make this own judgment. But let me tell you about the court's actual rulings on a right to privacy in the next video.